Exclamation, everybody, and welcome back to Cube Ramblings. For me, it is Sunday morning, a very early morning, January the 3rd, 2016. Happy New Year to everybody. I hope everyone has had an excellent week. As always, I have trolled through the RSS feeds and tried to pick out the gems that I could find, as I do every week. In case you're just tuning in for the first time, I am Memory Leak, and I am a space engineer's junkie. I just wanted to get that one out there right away because, yeah. I've had the last 2 weeks off from work, and my goal was noble. My goal was to get ahead on the channel, get all the recordings done that I can get done, just play as many games as I can, and make lots of videos. Well, the best laid plans, as always, never seem to work out well. One of my stipulations this during this vacation was I wanted to find a sandbox game to get back into, because my desire to play Minecraft has waned quite a bit, and I've been looking at other things. Signs of Life was pretty good. It's still being updated. I feel like I want to get back into that at some point. Terraria I was never quite into, but it's there. It's kind of hangs out there a little bit. It's been really done to death at this point. I've watched a lot of Terraria Let's Plays, so I kind of, by proxy, have played the game. And several others. There's a lot of, sandbox survival games. One of the ones that I kept coming back to, there's two actually, Medieval Engineers and Space Engineers, both by Keen Software House. I originally found out about Keen Software House when they released or started to work on Minor Wars, the Minor Wars game. I think it was Minor Wars 2048 or something, 2046, something like that, 2086, one of those numbers. And it was really cool, like, voxel-based mining game where there was going to be, a storyline to it and everything else. If you play Space Engineers, you will see it was basically the tech demo for Space Engineers. The unfortunate thing about that is they seem to kind of, sort of, in my opinion, abandon it. They just kind of just tossed it out there and was like, here it is, it's done. And it was, you couldn't get more than 15 frames per second, and it was pretty bad. It was kind of, there was not much to it, unfortunately. But it was, and it really stood up more as a tech demo for their V-Rage engine than anything else. And that engine is the thing that is now powering their by far more successful title, which is Space Engineers, and also Medieval Engineers. I don't know how much of a following Medieval Engineers has yet, since it was still very, very early, the last I dug into it. But I know Space Engineers has been out there for a bit. And I, off and on have tried to play those games, both of them. And the thing is, they have that same UI interface that Minor Wars had because of the same engine. And that UI is I just do not like it. It just, for some reason, it just doesn't click with me very well. I look at that UI in Space Engineers, and to me, it reeks of a programmer UI, which is to say there's buttons, knobs, and switches everywhere, and a whole lot of functionality that's hidden in plain sight. You know what I mean? So there's things you can do in there that you can't glean that that's how it's supposed to work until you've actually stumbled upon it, even though it's been there in front of your face the whole time. That kind of thing. So I really wish they would do something with their UIs. But it's, once you figure it out, it's not intuitive, but it's once you figure it out, you can gain some efficiencies with it, but it's not immediately easy to see how things fit together with it. That said, I intended to just play a little bit of it just to get a feel for it and see if I wanted to do a series on it. Still on the fence about it. I'm definitely want to go do a series on it, but it's not going to be a scheduled series because it takes a long time to make progress in the game, much like in Minecraft. A lot of people tend to want to see each Minecraft episode, want to see you make a whole lot of progress rather than be a talky episode per se, unless unless that's your bag of tricks. And I'm not very good at the talky stuff other than here. And even in here, I'm kind of very unremarkable and passable. But I wanted to at least dig into it and see if it was something that would be a thing. And ended up playing, I'm actually up to, I think, something like 30 or 40 hours of it, and I just started this week on it. So, yeah, I've been playing a whole lot of it. In fact, I stayed up last night until 4 in the morning because I was just hooked. I was just like, oh, everything's starting to open up. The light bulbs are going off. I'm starting to see things. I can see how the programmable blocks are working and how all the modular tubes and everything are going, the conveyors and stuff. Everything started to click into place. I was like, oh, I know how to do this. I know how to do that now, kind of. And so I am quite hooked on it. And I bring all this up in the front here because this is kind of fortuitous. I've noticed there's a bunch of top 50, top 10 lists that I'm going to go through today because it's, the end of the year / beginning of the year, and that's about all that passes for anything anymore around this time. There's no releases happening in January. Usually everything's been released by this point. But I wanted to go through that, and it does appear in one and or several of those lists. So I wanted to sort of talk about that a little bit because it is a bug that has bitten me. I feel in many ways the way I felt when I first got Minecraft, and by that I mean I had played Minecraft for a little bit here and there, and I'd seen videos online of people enjoying it, and that's what made me sort of dig into the game because I had looked at it briefly and I was like, why would anybody want this? This doesn't seem like something that's fun. And then when you watch somebody else having fun on it and making their own fun, you're like, oh, suddenly something clicks and you're like, oh, okay, let me look at this. And so I started to dig into it a little bit and play around with it a little bit, and then suddenly that light bulb goes off and the game starts to click with you, and you end up starting to put marathon sessions into the game, and that's how I was with Minecraft Alpha. I so wish, I've mentioned this a few times before, I wish I had kept my first Alpha world. I kept every other world I did, but the first Alpha world I actually deleted, and it was awesome. It was an awesome world. I deleted it because I had used some mods along the way, and they weren't really working anymore, so it kind of destroyed some of it. Well, not destroyed it, but it sort of made it not as authentic as it was. Even though the mods that I used blocks that were in the vanilla game, it still felt kind of weird because there was things that didn't work. Like I was using the Stargates mod in the back in the day, where you would put, instead of doing the nether portals, you would put a portal in, what is that? The same material. Nothing is coming to my brain right now. Obsidian. You would do it in obsidian, but instead of doing it like in a normal square portal shape, you would do it from the Stargate TV series, do it in like a circular shape or whatever shape you really wanted. You could actually change the file that did it. And it would work just the same way. You would have a DHD in front, and you could dial between different gates, and it would, rather than instead of taking you to the nether, it would take you to the overworld in those other places, and you could just pop around and do your thing. And that was pretty cool. But but that first world, man, I wish I had saved it, because it would have been a nice nice nostalgia trip to walk through at some point, not knowing, in the future that I'd be able to run an old version of Minecraft and from the new launcher and be able to run that map as it was intended. But anyway, nostalgia and all that. I feel the way I felt then when the light bulb clicked and I was putting in tons of hours into something is the way I feel right now for Space Engineers. As I talk to you right now, my other computer is possibly running the game right now, and possibly I can't see it on my screen, but I'm kind of worried that my guy did I give him 5 oxygen vials? Is he going to survive long enough? Is he going to die while I'm sitting here talking to you guys? Because I don't want to have him die. But then at the same time, I do want all those ores I've been refining to keep refining. So it's like the tchotchke of my world now. The thing that I'm trying to keep running with. It really took me by surprise that it just suddenly caught on this week, and I was just I need to. All this stuff now needs to be explored. So you'll be seeing a little bit more of that on channel. Not, like I said, I can't guarantee any kind of schedule on it because things do take a lot of time, and I do want to make sure that I don't drop other series along the way. I've been kind of dropping the ball as it is a little bit, but a lot of that is due to just family obligations, and December just being a really crappy month for me. Which is why it's a brand new month and I'm hoping for better things right now. But it was just a whole lot of being pulled in multiple directions, which seems like it's going to level out a bit now that my vacation is over. Go figure. But yeah, I spent the better part of this week just immersed in games, just playing all kinds of games. Space Engineers mostly, but I also played UnderRail. Played that for the channel. About 2 hours of that. I edited down to about 2 hours, but I played about 2.5, almost 3 hours of it. It's interesting. I've gone into depth, I guess, a little bit on what I thought about it while I was playing it. Not a huge fan of some of the old school RPGs. I shouldn't say that. I do like the old school RPGs, but there are certain mechanics that I'd never really liked too much about them. Especially we're going to not give you very good direction as to which way where you're supposed to go. And then once you go the wrong way, we're just going to throw these ridiculously hard challenges at you that you can't possibly meet, and we're not going to give you a map for some reason. That's really irks me. We're going to give you quest objectives, but they're going to be very vague, which I didn't like about Divinity Original Sin either. That was my biggest complaint about Divinity Original Sin is not only was it ridiculously hard at first and then got really easy, but the quest objectives were so obtuse you couldn't tell what you needed to do next to satisfy the quest, or if you could, because some of them, you hadn't unlocked the area yet that you needed to be in, so you couldn't complete them, but there was no indication that was the case. It was just kind of sitting there in your quest log, and you're like, well, I don't know what I need to do next for this, and it used to drive me insane, because I'm like, I want to complete some quests, but I don't know what I need to do. There's no direction. Have I met the people I'm supposed to meet yet? Did I fail the quest and not realize it, and the game doesn't realize it yet? It's not going to tell me until later on, or do I have to abandon it? What's up here? So that kind of thing turns me off a little bit about those things. I really want some clear objectives when I'm doing things. I know it makes it more immersive when you have to kind of figure things out on your own, but if that's that important to your game, then make it a toggle and let people like me have the guiding hand rather than the good luck, figure it out for yourself type of thing. Especially on a very niche game like that. If it was something like Space Engineers, they can kind of get away with being obtuse because 9,000 people have put wiki pages up that will kind of document slightly how things are working based on what they've seen, and you can kind of use the collective knowledge of them to try to help guide you. It still sucks. It's still like a wiki game, but at least it's something. When you have a small niche title, finding that kind of thing is a needle in a haystack, and usually fruitless. It doesn't tell you what you need to know about it. That said, there is I will link you to Destructoid. They did a review of UnderRail. I did say UnderRail, right? Not Undertale. Ooh. They're very, very close in theme, but their inspirations are very different. I even say it in the video that, Undertale took a lot of its, it's 8-bit old school RPG, just like UnderRail, but it took most of its inspiration from Earthbound, whereas UnderRail took most of its inspiration from, Fallout 1 and 2. And you can see that in the way things roll out there, and maybe a little bit from Metro 2033 as well, because it does take place in, a post-apocalyptic Earth, underground in metro stations that have become the new living quarters of humanity and all that stuff. So from that perspective, and it's turn-based combat, so you're playing the percentage game a lot. One of the things that I really disliked about it was your starting weapons have very low durability. So I ended up having to, and the game throws 9,000 enemies at you, right? Even on easy mode, it throws 9,000 enemies at you. You have very low durability on your items. So you end up repairing something to full health, and then you get swarmed by 20 freaking rats, and every time you do a hit, or even a miss, your durability goes down, and it just quickly adds up to a point where it's like, well, okay, I can't. This is ridiculous now, right? I mean, and when your durability goes down on your weapons, your percentage to hit goes down, and you're going to be standing right next to something, and your percentage to hit's like 83%, and you'll miss like 5 times in a row. And then after you've missed 5 times in a row, your durability goes down a notch. So now your percentage to hit, even though he hasn't moved at all, keeps going down by 10% until it hits like 40% or something, and then it drops down to 10%. It's annoying as hell. And I did figure out how to retreat eventually towards the end, but it does involve running all the way across the map while these things chase you mercilessly. I mean, they don't ever give up. They don't retreat or anything. And there's little things like that just kind of make it painful for me to play that game, and it kind of sucks. I want it. Whenever I think about an old school RPG game, I always think of them with fond memories. And to have one like this that tries to capture that feeling, but then just, falls short from easily, recognizable flaws. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't know. Things like that kind of irk me a little bit. But, other than that, I mean, it's fun if you can put up with that. If you can put up with that kind of thing, if you're into that kind of thing, it should be a whole lot of fun for a couple hours. I don't know how long it actually lasts, but that was my tale of UnderRail. I am gonna mix all those words up just for you guys. Another quick hitter here before I get into the top lists, top 50s and top 10s lists out there. Actually, 2 quick hitters. One is, if you're an esports fan, and I am not an esports fan, I don't really follow esports at all. I don't even know where to begin to follow them, to be honest with you, because there's so much like I play a lot of Paladins, and I'm in the Discord chat, and I see a lot of people talking about ELO and stuff, and I have no idea what anything. There's all these acronyms being flown by, and I'm like, I have no, I have no idea what you're talking about. None whatsoever. I'm just playing a game for fun. It just so happens to have an esport angle on it, but I mean, what doesn't anymore because it's a cash cow, but yeah, some news from the esports realm is that MLG, Major League Gaming, is possibly, though unconfirmed, has been sold off to Activision Blizzard and for a hefty sum. I think it was like 40 million or something like that. And they are basically only going to pay out a few of the investors, a few of the big investors, like the Class B shares or something like that. And then everyone else who invested gets shit canned. They get nothing out of it. They got screwed. The sale happened without any shareholder meeting or approval. It was just done through a backdoor means that a lot of companies have. And it's could possibly mean that there will be. It's looking like MLG will be dissolved entirely, and swallowed up by whatever Activision Blizzard's coming up with. And I think Activision Blizzard has been, since they are sort of leading the esports. They have games that are top in esports stuff. Kind of. I mean, Call of Duty is higher than most Activision Blizzard stuff, but they've hired some people that seem to suggest that they're going to be pushing that esports angle pretty heavily, and so they'll probably be the ones funding a lot of these tournaments and everything going forward. Whereas MLG seems like it will be no more, and they kind of, as many people have mentioned in the comments, they had a thing going. They had a thing before Twitch was a thing, right? And arguably Twitch became a thing because of MLG's lead, arguably. Where there was streaming of events and everything, but it was all on the MLG site, and it was not, when Twitch came about, they could have really integrated with Twitch and just moved everything over there, but instead they wanted to be their own thing, and they were frequently dropping older games that didn't have as much of a following as the newer games did because of the way their revenue model was structured, and they always needed, even if anything had like the slightest hint of not having enough viewership, then it was dropped, even though it was still a very popular thing, and a lot of those communities that were shunned were very angry about that, and so on and so forth. So there might be some cheering, I guess, from those quarters. I don't know, honestly. I very, very much a noob in that whole string of things, but it's you don't want to see competition necessarily go away like that. You really want to see more independent organizations taking charge of some of these esport things, because there's no. It feels like it sort of levels the ground maybe a little bit, but and there's still plenty out there, but it's to have that all fall under the developers of the games and have them be the ones push it. It kind of mixes your peanut butter and your chocolate a little bit, I feel like, but not being close to it, I can't really add any more flavor to that other than to say I'll leave you a link that will pretty much describe what I just said. I mean, there's not a whole lot of information about what's actually happened. It took place apparently on the 21st, and no one really found out about it until much later. So we'll have to wait and see what comes out of that. I'm sure someone will be coming off of vacation next Monday and probably speaking about it. Who knows? Who knows at this point? In addition to that, the second quick hitter that I wanted to talk about, Just Cause 3, a game that I own, that I pre-ordered, that I haven't played very much of yet because I have so many other things on my plate right now. But I intend on getting into once I've gotten through some other things. It will probably be. I don't know that I will live stream it. Maybe I will. I don't know. It's one of those things where there's a whole lot of. I may not even record. I don't know. There's a little bit of story punctuated by a whole lot of grind, and that's usually the case with all the Just Cause games. So if I did put anything up, I might just stick to story stuff and then do all the other stuff off camera. Who knows? Who knows? If I ever get to that point, you'll be the the second to know, as always. But like in Just Cause 2, one of the things that Just Cause 2, I guess, added to the longevity of it was that the community stepped up and modders brought multiplayer to Just Cause 2. And in fact, I think that actually became an official thing. Like the developers actually took that and said, hey, we'll, mad props to you. We'll actually integrate this with our system now. I think. I'm not entirely sure. In that same vein, Just Cause 3, which is a single-player game, modders are saying that they are bringing multiplayer to it. So we will be able to get multiplayer into Just Cause 3, just like in Just Cause 2. The multiplayer, from what I saw on Just Cause 2, and I didn't participate in it myself, but from what I saw on streams and other things, it looked like a heck of a lot of fun. I mean, it's basically, the Just Cause games are single-player games, which are basically single-player blow shit up games. And, being able to share that destruction with others at the same time just makes it just makes it that much more fun to watch, I think. And probably more fun to play, too. So that's something interesting to just to throw out there for you. As always, a link in the description will take you to a little bit more information on that. Not a whole lot to go on just yet, but I believe it's the same modders that did Just Cause 2, the Just Cause 2 multiplayer mod. So, hopefully good quality. We'll follow them around. Let's see. What else do I have on the list? So, I think those were all the light, hitters that I had on my plate here. There was a small update about Terraria Otherworld, which is the spin-off from Relogic of Terraria, where it's basically Terraria in a fantasy land. And they were just showing, in the video that's embedded, they were just showing a few, the grappling hooks and how you can swing back and forth on them now. Still not a whole lot of information about it. It looks basically like Terraria. There was some Crimson in there too, which I think Crimson was a thing that was in Terraria as well. But it's just in the art style is more fantastical, more fantasy, and the setting is more, magic and fantasy and all that stuff. So, which was always kind of the weird thing with Terraria, right? Terraria was always kind of a weird dichotomy, right? You had this, what looked like a sort of a medieval thing, right? Where you're just building stuff. But then they threw some sci-fi in there, and they also threw these like monsters that would just spawn and you would have to shoot and stuff. And so it was like kind of all these, it was a blender with a lot of different things in it. And it feels like by taking that into a fantasy land, they probably did a really good, it probably is a little bit more consistent throughout, just with what you already know with Terraria. And I imagine, given Relogic's penchant for putting tons and tons and tons of content in their stuff, like thousands of weapons and hundreds of monsters, types, and all that stuff, I can imagine that it's probably going to be a pretty cool thing for most people who are fans of Terraria. Again, never been much of a fan myself. I played just a few hours of it, and then I was like, whatever. I'm more of a fan of Starbound, honestly, even though it's almost the same thing, except sci-fi. And I haven't been back into Starbound in ages either. So, that's another little video there that might wet your whistle even more about stuff. Also, we got an update from Valve on what happened over Christmas, and I'm just going to read. Just to bring you guys up to speed. Last week I talked about this, but I'll just bring you back up. Valve on Christmas Day made some configuration changes, and some users were seeing cached authenticated pages for other users, namely the account pages and the information contained on account pages for users that were not themselves, mostly in a different language, but also, not necessarily always. They were not able to, as far as we know, access any of those access any functionality, but they were able to see, billing address and other private information that should never have ever made it to a cache in the first place. So I'm gonna read this full update for you. I'll also link it to you in case my English is too stuttery for most. But I'm going to read this whole thing, and then I'll just make one small comment on it at the end. So, update on Christmas issues. We'd like to follow up with more information regarding Steam's troubled Christmas. What happened? On December 25th, a configuration error resulted in some users seeing Steam store pages generated for other users. Between 11:50 Pacific Standard Time and 13:20 Pacific Standard Time, that's 11:50 in the morning and 1:20 in the afternoon, store page requests for about 34,000 users, which contain sensitive personal information, may have been returned and seen by other users. The content of these requests varied by page, but some pages included a Steam user's billing address, the last 4 digits of their Steam Guard phone number, their purchase history, the last 2 digits of their credit card number, and or their email address. These cached requests did not include full credit card numbers, user passwords, or enough data to allow logging in as or completing a transaction as another user. If you do not browse a Steam store page with your personal information, such as your account page or checkout page, in this time frame, that information could not have been shown to another user. Valve is currently working with our web caching partner to identify users whose information was served to other users, and will be contacting those affected once they have been identified. As no unauthorized actions were allowed on accounts beyond the viewing of cached page information, no additional action is required by users. How it happened. Early Christmas morning, Pacific Standard Time, the Steam store was the target of a DOS attack, which prevented, or DOS is denial of service, by the way, attack which prevented the serving of store pages to users. Attacks against the Steam store and Steam in general are a regular occurrence that Valve handles both directly and with the help of partner companies, and typically do not impact Steam users. During the Christmas attack, traffic to the Steam store increased 2,000% over the average traffic during the Steam sale. In response to this specific attack, caching rules managed by a Steam web caching partner were deployed in order to both minimize the impact on Steam store servers and continue to route legitimate user traffic. During the second wave of this attack, a second caching configuration was deployed that incorrectly cached web traffic Let's try it again. A second caching configuration was deployed that incorrectly cached web traffic for authenticated users. This configuration error resulted in some users seeing Steam store responses which were generated for other users. Incorrect store responses varied from users seeing the front page of the store displayed in the wrong language to seeing the account page of another user. Once this error was identified, the Steam store was shut down and a new caching configuration was deployed. The Steam store remained down until we had reviewed all caching configurations, and we received confirmation that the latest configuration had been deployed to all partner servers and that all cached data on Edge servers had been purged. We will continue to work with our web caching partner to identify affected users and to improve the process used to set caching rules going forward. We apologize to everyone whose personal information was exposed by this error and for interruption of Steam store service. That sound you hear is the sound of a bus being driven over a third-party vendor. All of this sounds very plausible. Based on my own experiences with e-commerce, all this sounds about right. It's pretty close to what I had kind of guessed in my own mind as to what happened. I did not know that a denial of service was going on, but it actually makes more sense now that they were doing caching configuration changes, because otherwise there would be no reason to do that during Christmas unless you were getting a whole hell of a lot of traffic, and that's exactly what was happening with the denial of service going on. So all that sounds very plausible. Not knowing how their site is set up or who their caching provider is and all, or DDoS protection is, I can't say whether or not all that is rings true. It sounds true to me based on my own experiences. Yes, configuration changes can cause that kind of thing. It's kind of unnerving that we're one configuration change away from all of our billing information being exposed, but that is true for most sites. It's just that most sites have change control in place that prevents something like that from happening. You don't, when a DOS comes in, you don't run around like a chicken with its head cut off. You have processes and procedures in place to make sure that crap like this doesn't happen, because it's a freaking nightmare. So I think someone had said in a comment section, and I apologize, I don't know who it was or where I read it or where I heard it from, but someone had said that Valve needs to stop treating Steam like it's a lemonade stand and start treating it like it's a multi-million-dollar business. And that's exactly right. Multi-million-dollar businesses have change control. It sucks. It's terrible. It makes you go very, very slowly. But it also makes sure that you're not one configuration change away from exposing sensitive information. Or at least, if you are, that, and it does happen, that there's plenty of heads on the chopping block, not a whole lot of vague responses like, yeah, we kind of are just working with processes and stuff. We're trying to put some processes in place, you know. It's like, no, you should already have processes in place, and that bust should not be necessary. It should already have happened, you know. But it's neither here nor there. It is the sort of corporate apology that you're going to get, that people have been asking for over a week now, and they kind of got it. And it is, at least for me, for my own background many years ago doing e-commerce stuff, it sounds very plausible. You do have third-party caches and stuff like that. You go to great lengths to make sure that nothing that is supposed to require authentication ever gets cached. The fact of the matter is, you do end up pushing things out to a cache rather than pulling. The ideal cache is a pull cache where it's like, you know, it sits between the server and the user is basically, you know, it's like a sort of a transparent proxy thing. And that way, authenticated pages don't necessarily, like, when a user goes to an authenticated page, they go to a completely different edge server that doesn't know how to cache anything, right? They just go somewhere different, so that you have multiple layers of being able to, you know, it becomes that much more difficult to accidentally capture things in a cache that shouldn't be there. But again, I don't know how they're set up. I don't know what their platform is. I don't even know what language they've written their stuff in. So I can't speak to anything other than to say it all sounds quite, you know, it all sounds truthful, honestly. I don't think there's anything, I don't see anything hidden in there that would make me throw up a flag, you know. So there you go. There you have it. Valve has finally gotten back to people on it, and I'll link you to their response so you can read it rather than listen to my poor accent try to handle it. Apparently, Halo Reach. I mentioned a few weeks ago, I think, that Halo Reach was one of the games that is now available as a backwards compatible title on Xbox One. So, you know, Microsoft has been slowly making the Xbox One be able to handle some Xbox 360 games. Quite an extensive list. It's getting more and more extensive every month. But Halo Reach was one of them. Apparently, though, Halo Reach on Xbox One is actually getting very bad frame rate issues. Some are saying about 15 frames per second as opposed to occasionally getting 30 on the Xbox 360. Microsoft is apparently aware that there's a problem, and they are looking into what's going on there to see if they can improve that. But it's something to just keep in mind. If you own Halo Reach like me and you want to try to start to play it on Xbox One, you may want to wait for a little bit until they try to fix this, whatever this performance issue is, with their emulation layer, to allow them to play that game. And to be fair, that kind of thing is sort of expected, right? Because emulation layers, many years ago, I wanted to, off and on, I've been looking at emulators and how to write them. And many years ago, I was looking at possibly emulating or trying to see what it would take to emulate like an N64 or an original Xbox. And at the time, the computer hardware was not sufficient to be able to do it. Now that quickly is becoming a moot point because computers are continuing to improve in their performance as we go on. But back then it was the hardware that was on a computer, the general purpose hardware in the computer was not specialized enough to handle the rendering of the code from the ROMs, the rendering of the code that, the running of the ROMs for like an Xbox One, and get some kind of respectable performance out of it, right? Because obviously a computer is a different beast as far as what its priorities are and all that stuff. That's becoming less and less as time goes on, obviously, because we're talking about decades old hardware now, and versus 2-year-old or 3-year-old hardware. But I can say that just from what I read and from what I was looking at when I was looking at that stuff, that performance issues tend to be a problem because you're trying to emulate old hardware, and a lot of games have, because they're always pushing the limits of your hardware, a lot of games have strict timing needs to them. Making sure that when you accurate emulation is a very difficult thing to do, because you need to make sure that all of your opcodes and everything run at the exact same cycles that it, if it took 5 cycles to run a jump on an Xbox 360, then it needs to take at least 5 cycles on the Xbox One. It can't go less than that, or your emulation is going to run too fast. It can't go too more than that, or it's going to run too slow. So there's a lot of precise timing in there to try to get as pure an emulation as you can. And with games being structured the way they are, a lot of them rely very heavily on that strict timing. Like, they know that this is going to take so many milliseconds to run before they do the next thing. Like the physics, you hear about games where the physics is based on frame rate. And a lot of that is because of the precise timing. It's, you've got a pipeline of stuff that has to get done, and that, all right, I've got 300 milliseconds to work on the AI, to do all the AI processing. I got 300 milliseconds to do all the back face culling and all that stuff for the graphics rendering pipeline, and get all the models set up. I got 200 milliseconds to load all the models from disk. I got this and that. You have that strict timing going down there, and if any one of those things is slightly off, everything's slightly off, because it kind of messes up the sort of internal timing, sort of like the Swiss watch, if you will, of the game. So, long story short, you may want to wait a little bit and keep an eye on the updates that they'll be making for the emulation for Halo Reach. I imagine there'll be a few more as they go along there. Cool. All right. So now I've gotten most of that stuff off my plate, and wow, we're like 45 minutes in. I was not expecting to take that long on it. We have a bunch of top 10 lists to go through, so I'm going to try my best to do some justice to some of these things. I haven't played all of these games, but I at least want to rank them off and show them off. So I promised that the IndieDB Indie of the Year 2015, the Player's Choice, has finally come in. The votes for that have finally been tabulated, so we know what that is. I've already talked about the Editor's Choice for the top 10. Now we're looking at the Player's Choice. And number 10 on that for 2015 was Undertale. We talked a little bit about that earlier. It's an RPG where you control a human who falls underground into a world of monsters, and you must find your way out or stay trapped forever. Cute little sort of hearkening back to the Earthbound game from back in the day. Has the same kind of art style and some new mechanics put into the game. You don't have to kill all the enemies. You can actually just leave them alone, and you sort of convince them to stop being mean, kind of, or you can kill them if you want. Those kinds of things. So it's I've heard it's a pretty cute little game. It's got quite the following, even without having very little marketing behind it. I haven't played it personally myself, but maybe someday I'll. I was never really a big fan of the Earthbound stuff, so I don't know. I mean, even though it's like a sci-fi thing, Earthbound, but it's who knows? Maybe someday I will give in and I'll sit down and try to play it and see what it's like for me. Number 9 was Ark Survival Evolved. Yes, the still in early access. It's basically dinosaurs survival. You are dropped with nothing into a survival world where it is ruled by dinosaurs, and you spend a whole lot of time collecting dinosaur poop and knocking dinosaurs out and getting them knocked up with other dinosaurs and making babies and building some houses, and basically Minecraft, only dinosaurs and slightly better graphics. Well, actually a lot better graphics. It's one of those games where you pretty much, I think it's all completely multiplayer. I don't think there is a single player version of it. I think it's all, you need some multiplayer server to play on. And if you're not playing on a multiplayer server, you really probably want to, because it's one of those games where it needs to be shared in order to be a lot of fun, I would say. I have not personally played it. I'm not really into the survival games. Are a dime a dozen these days, and I'm picking and choosing my poison as it goes. And Ark it's kind of interesting, but I was never really that much into dinosaurs, so it's not really my cup of tea per se. Number 8, Verdun. I've talked a little bit about that before. It's a multiplayer World War I shooter, trench warfare, realistic shooter. So it's one bullet kills and all those things. Authentic weaponry, authentic uniforms, real battlefields in France and Belgium. It's basically on the Western Front. It had some interesting game modes where you like trench warfare game modes, kind of like capture the flag, except capture the trench kind of thing going on. I actually own the game, but I have not really dug into it because I have the military shooters I've never really been that much into. I kind of like my sci-fi shooters or the unrealistic shooters where I can take, like, I'm a bullet sponge, not a, hey, you spawned in and bam, you're shot in the head, and now wait a minute. And, oh, hey, you spawned in, bam, shot in the head, wait a minute. It's kind of, that's what usually happens to me in those games. So that's why I have a love-hate relationship with them. In number 7th place is Prison Architect. This was actually high on the list of the editor's choice things as well. And it is by Introversion Software. I mentioned this before in the last episode when we talked about the editor's choice stuff. You building and managing a maximum security prison. It's management sim, building sim. It's kind of interesting. It's rather interesting, and I think it's fully released too. It's not in early access anymore. All that stuff. I think it was fully released in October. Number 6 was Soma, horror game that wasn't really very horror filled. Honestly, the first part of the game was kind of horror, and then it just kind of forgot and just did its thing. Had an interesting premise, but the story kind of died out. I mean, it just, it felt like, just from watching other people play it just felt like the story just kind of, it was thought provoking, but it was just kind of bland towards the end. It just didn't quite go far enough. It didn't quite go deep enough, I guess, at that point. Number 5, Rocket League. I played quite a bit of the game. I was never very good at it, but it's it's one of those games. It's a fun little multiplayer game, knocking a soccer ball around. They have with the DLC, you can actually do like modified. Modifiers, where you can. I was watching somebody play on an ice rink. Instead of a grass field, they were playing on an ice rink, and they had a puck they were shooting around, and it's really cool stuff. It was a bit of a sleeper hit that just kind of just caught on one day, and it's like everybody and their grandmother now is playing Rocket League, which is kind of cool. It's a fun game in its own right, and so far has done well by its player base. I mean, the DLC has been reasonable, and it's really doing a good killing, I'd say. Number 4, Besiege. A game that I got as part of the Humble monthly bundle and have yet to actually dig into. But it's a physics game where you build a medieval siege weapon and are tasked with destroying fortifications with it. And you can build the craziest contraptions you can come up with and let them see what kind of havoc you wreak on it. It's still, I believe, in early access. It's been in early access for pretty much most of the year. Or most of 2015, and I think it's continuing on in that. A little interesting thing to dig into. In 3rd place, Black Mesa. Black Mesa, what started out as a mod for the original Half-Life, took on a life of its own, where it's actually got really good, story around it, and a, graphical upgrade, and permission from Valve to actually go and sell it as an actual thing. So really cool on those guys. I think it still says it's in early access. I don't know if it's fully released yet or not, but it's I've seen some playthroughs of it, and it looks fairly complete to me. And I've never played any Half-Life games, so I can't speak to the story or anything like that. So, but it is I believe that you take on the role of Gordon Freeman, just like from the Half-Life games, and you go through Black Mesa Research Facility. But then I don't know how it deviates or doesn't or what. So, in 2nd place, Squad, which is still in early access and just came out in December. Another military multiplayer, realistic military shooter. Don't know much more about it. And in 1st place, the thing that I kicked off this episode with, Space Engineers. Space Engineers is in 1st place, was given 1st place with all the votes. And I can see why, honestly. Having been bitten by the bug, I can see why, especially with the planetary stuff that they have, although it's still very, very early. Like, if you're thinking to yourself, should I buy Space Engineers yet? I would say wait. I mean, if you're going to buy it for planets, wait. If you're going to buy it for like asteroid mining and stuff, yeah, you can probably do it now. But if you want to do the planetary stuff, and you would be better off buying into the early access for Empyrean Galactic Survival than this, because they do the planets. They're a lot further along with planets in that game than they are really in Space Engineers right now. So it would be a wait and see if that's what you're banking on for that. But anyway, very cool game. Very having a lot of fun with it. That's for damn sure. So that was the IndieDB Indie of the Year 2015 winners. Let's see. Can I get through another one? Probably. We will look at. There's two of them here from Eurogamer. I'm going to try to cover both of them at once, and we'll see how well this works out. Eurogamer has the top 50 games of 2015 as voted by the readers and as voted by the editors. So I'm going to go through the editors one really fast because it's just a list, and then we'll talk about. We'll see how this list matches up with the more interesting list, which is that of the readers. So going from 46 on up to number 1, yes, there are 50 here, but there's a lot of ties. Tied for 46 is The Crew Wild Run, Skylanders Trap Team, Affordable Space Adventures, Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, and Rock Band 4. The Crew Wild Run is actually a DLC, I believe, for The Crew. A game that I didn't really like too much. You would think I would like it because it's got all the same trappings of like a open world racing game like I've played before, but it just was not very compelling, honestly, the way they did it. Tied for 41st place, PES 2016, I have no idea what that is, Undertale, Assassin's Creed Syndicate, Majora's Mask 3DS, Geometry Wars 3. Tied for 38th place, Downwell, Project Cars, and Elite Dangerous. Tied for 32nd. There's a lot of ties in this. I don't know what they're doing here. Tied for 32nd, Guitar Hero Live, Pillars of Eternity, StarCraft Legacy of the Void, Prison Architect, Darius Burst, Chronicle Saviors, Heroes of the Storm. And tied for 27th. Why do they have... I don't know why they have so many freaking ties in this thing. It's like... Lord knows you can't do a tiebreaker. I mean... 27th place, Hearthstone League of Explorers, Soma, Codename Steam, Sunless Sea, and Star Wars Battlefront. In 26th place, all by its lonesome, Just Cause 3. Tied for 24th is Broforce, Tales from the Borderlands and Broforce. In 23rd is The Swindle. Tied for 21st is Xenoblade Chronicles X and Transformers Devastation. Tied for 18th, City Skylines After Dark, Nuclear Throne, and Grow Home. In 17th, all by itself, is Warhammer Vermintide. Tied for 15th, Until Dawn and Super Mario Maker. 14th place, Destiny Taken King expansion. 13th is The Beginner's Guide. 12th, Batman Arkham Knight. 11th, Fallout 4. 10th, Life is Strange. 9th, Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. 8th, Monster Hunter 4. 7th, Invisible Ink. Very high on the list. That's very cool to see. 6th, Her Story. 5th, The Witcher 3. 4th, Rocket League. 3rd, Splatoon. 2nd, Metal Gear Solid 5, Phantom Pain. And number 1, Bloodborne. So now we've gotten the boring list out of play. Let's get the more interesting one, which is the Reader's Top 50 Games of 2015. At 50th, the Readers have put The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask 3D. It's a remake of Majora's Mask in 3D for, I guess, the Wii U, possibly? I have no idea. I have not followed Nintendo in ages, so I can't comment much on that. But I do know that Majora's... Well, I mean, the Legend of Zelda series is well beloved. I like some of the games in it. But I know Majora's Mask and the other one that goes before it slightly were really much beloved Nintendo 64 games. 49th was Heroes of the Storm. I'm surprised to see it so low, but a lot of people have said that as far as MOBAs go, Heroes of the Storm is not as competitive for them as they would like. I can see that because it's one of those sort of gateway drugs. I look at it as. I liked it because I liked the idea that it was a very light MOBA that I could possibly get into. I did not like the people I was playing with. Basically, the only reason I have not gone back to Heroes of the Storm is because I do not like the community. They were really. I just didn't. They were not playing for fun. They were playing to make loot money. they were playing to make esports money and not to just have fun. So that's kind of the way I position that in my brain. 48th was Sunless Sea, a game that I've owned and I've wanted to do a video on for many ages. The problem is, in fact, I actually tried to do a video on Sunless Sea. The problem is it's a whole lot of reading. There's no voice acting in it. It's a top-down roguelike or roguelite, whatever term you want to use there, that has a really rich fantasy world around it. You are basically thrown into a world where England has been thrown underground in the undersea, and there's monsters, and you have to manage the horror of your crew, and that depends on how well your crew works together, and that's how you get your experience, by exploring. And it's there's a lot of like old school sort of pen and paper ish choices to things, like 5 dialogue choices and all that stuff. And it has a modular storytelling thing where they can update the modules themselves online. You buy the game and you might get some additional modules as they release them, kind of thing. It's a very interesting concept. There's a lot of cool stuff about it. It's just really hard to watch someone else play it, right? It's one of those things where it's a lot of fun to play yourself. It's not a whole lot of fun to really watch, and it's kind of obtuse in a little bit as well. So even as you're playing it, you're kind of like, I don't quite understand some things here and there. But other than that, I didn't play that much of it because obviously I'm trying to focus on things that I'm actually going to make videos of. But I did play a few hours here and there, and it was fun for what I could get out of it. I just need time to really sit down and play it. It's one of those things that will take hundreds of hours probably to get through. At 47th was Final Fantasy XIV Heaven's Word. Heaven's Word? Or is that? Yeah, Heaven's Word. I thought that would be Heaven's Sword, but it's not. It's Heaven's Word. Maybe that's the title of it. I don't know. I have not played a Final Fantasy game at all in my life, so I can't comment on that. 46th was Call of Duty Black Ops 3. Saw some Let's Plays of it. There's, I could see it having a lot of longevity because of the zombie horde mode that released. That seemed like a very popular thing that they had on there. A lot of multiplayer stuff going on with that. I mean, it's a Call of Duty game, but the single player I think was not very good as far as I can tell. Again, a Call of Duty game, so whatever. 45th was Yakuza 5. I have not played any of the Yakuza games, so I don't know anything about that. 44th was Drive Club Bikes. What is this? I have no idea. I have no idea. The little text blurb underneath of it does not tell me anything. I guess I could read the review, but I'm not going to bother. So I have no idea what that is. I guess it's a bike racing game, basically, possibly. I don't know. Pro Evolution Soccer 2016. Not a big soccer fan, honestly. 42nd, Kerbal Space Program. Kind of surprised to see it so low, honestly, because it seems like one of those games that is right up the alley of a lot of people. You can buy it, and get hundreds and hundreds of hours of enjoyment out of it for that small price that you paid, and have a lot of fun with just shooting rockets around. So I'm kind of surprised to see that so low on the list, honestly. Another one I'm surprised to see low on the list, Invisible Ink. As I just said earlier, I was glad to see it at number 7 on the editor's choice, but it's number 41 on the gamer's choice. And honestly, Invisible Ink is great. Like it's balls hard, but it's supposed to be balls hard. And it's one of those things you can jump into it for 10, 15 minutes and maybe play a few levels and then jump out of it again and then come back to it, a couple days later and, do 10, 15 minutes. And maybe that's why it's so low on the list, is that it's just it's a 10 to 15 minute game, and then, you go back and try again. Maybe an hour if you have an hour. It's one of those things where you can spend as much time as you want in it without really. It does get grindy the longer you play it, because it's a roguelike. So you die pretty quickly if you're not doing it right. But it's still it's unforgivable. It's not unforgivable. It's unforgiving is the word I wanted to use. So I don't know. I don't know about that one. I'm kind of suspect that was so low on the choices. Number 40, Yoshi's Woolly World. Again, Nintendo stuff I don't know about. Number 39, StarCraft II: Legacy of the Void. Another one that's surprisingly low on the list, because you'd think StarCraft II is like a money-making. It's just a cash register in the making. But I guess it might have been low because, from what I understand, the campaign and what I saw, the campaign was kind of lackluster in terms of story, not really wrapping up StarCraft II like people had hoped it would. So who followed it? So maybe that's why it got so low on the list. I don't know. Her Story at number 38. Another one that's an interesting departure from normal games, where you're basically charged with you're looking at videos of a woman who was interviewed by police, I think on 7 different occasions, and you're seeing little snippets here and there, and you got to search using keywords for each of the snippets as you're watching the videos to try to figure out what try to piece it together yourself. It's kind of an interesting little, different gameplay mechanic. And I imagine that's why it's probably so low on the list, is that it's just not, it's one of those things you play it for, an hour or two, and then you're done, and it's never really something you need to come back to again, because you're just done. You've seen everything. So, number 37 on the list, Just Cause 3. I suspect that's, it's a Just Cause 3. I can see this being this low because it's not it's one of those things where if you played other Just Cause games, you'll like Just Cause 3. If you haven't, you're probably wondering what the hell the hubbub's about, because there's a whole lot of the same stuff over and over again. Like, hey, blow this up. Hey, blow it up. Hey, blow this up. Hey, blow that up. And really, the proper way to play it is, I just feel like going and just playing for an hour and just making crazy physics things happen. I want to jump from one plane to another, or I want to launch myself in a rocket car and then grapple onto a plane, then fly that plane into a building and jump out of it safely and land on a parachute and land on top of a car and ride that car around. It's just crazy chains of events that you're trying to come up with to sort of entertain yourself, because the game in and of itself is not necessarily going to entertain you. It's sort of sandboxy in that you kind of have to find your own entertainment in it. Number 36, Elite Dangerous on the Xbox One. I don't know why they qualified that, but they did. I guess it's on here again later on. Elite Dangerous, a good, sci-fi space fighter game that has absolutely no content in it yet. I think that's the real big problem I've had with it. Was I played a little bit of it. It's very cool from the Starfighter, kind of genre, but there wasn't a whole lot to do in the game yet, and still isn't, as far as I know. But it's constantly being updated, so eventually I'm sure they'll figure something out. Number 35, Captain Toad Treasure Tracker. Don't know anything about it. Number 34, Soma. Talked a little bit about that earlier. Number 33, Forza Motorsport 6. It's interesting. I liked Forza Horizon 2. I'd never played Forza Horizon itself, the original one. I was kind of waiting to see if that would be backwards compatible, and I'd go pick it up, because I don't think that was ever released on the Xbox One. The Forza Motorsport stuff basically is the same kind of thing, but it just takes all the open world out of it and just throws you into tracks. So I don't know. The Forza stuff, I would probably like it, but not as much as I like the open world. I'm going to drive around a place and pick and choose what I want to do kind of thing. Number 32, Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. I am surprised to see that so far up on the list, honestly. Based on the initial reviews and looks at it, I'm surprised that this was not number 50. Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate was at number 31. Number 30, Rainbow Six Siege. Have not played that yet either. Looks interesting. I've never played any of the Rainbow Six games. I was never into the tactical planning stuff per se, but it's certainly something to behold as far as I know. 29, Divinity Original Sin Enhanced Edition. A very good game, but like I've said earlier here, you have to have a tolerance for not knowing what to do next in the game as far as the quests go. The quest goals are not very well defined, so you will come across quests that you can't complete yet, and you don't know why you can't complete them yet. That's really the biggest problem I had with the game, is that it was just that. If they had fixed the questing system to a point where it would actually made some sense, what you need to do next. Like, you always knew what you had to go, where you had to go next and do stuff. It would have been a little bit. I feel like I would have kept my interest a lot longer, I think. Number 28, Assassin's Creed Syndicate. I actually think I own this game because I've bought graphics cards recently. So yeah, that's a thing. I've never played any Assassin's Creed games, so if I do play one, I guess I'll start with Syndicate, because why not? I got it for free because I bought graphics cards, so there you go. 27th, Uncharted, the Nathan Drake Collection, which I'm surprised, has that been released yet? I guess that was released already. To see it on this list, I have no idea. But the Uncharted series looks like a really good series that I always wish, having seen some videos of it, I wish I could play it. But it's on a PS4, and I'm not going to buy a PS4 just for that. That's sorry. Although I do have a PS3, so technically I could buy some of the older games. And maybe the Nathan Drake collection's on that too. I don't know. But I just, I'm so far removed from it at this point, I don't know that I would go back and do it. Unless it came out on PC, and then I'd be like, yep. Sign me up. 26, Cities Skylines. Yes, played a lot of that on my channel. I do intend on playing After Dark expansion at some point, but I need to get through. I have too many long-running threads right now, so I'm kind of just waiting on that. But I liked it. It's the SimCity that SimCity remake should have been, but wasn't, and it was very cool and very, very enjoyable. Lots of modding, the very active modding community. It's, new maps and assets and everything. Very cool game. Very much worth the price tag, honestly. Number 25, Mad Max, a game that I've been playing. Well, I need to get back to playing, but I was playing on live streams. I was enjoying that. I just got to a point in the game where I didn't understand how the car mechanics were going on. There was some, like, what was it, Archangel or something like that, that they were called, where you upgrade your car in certain ways, and you need to do that in order to progress in the game, but I couldn't quite understand what the hell it was telling me, so I got kind of frustrated and stopped for a little bit. But it is an open world shooter. It is very much, it's basically Just Cause 3, only it's got a little bit more of a story holding it together, honestly. Number 24, Project Cars, a game that I have always been on the fence about, because it looks like something I would enjoy, but at the same time it looks too simmy for me as far as the car racing goes. But I don't know. I've always been on the fence about Project Cars. I'm not sure whether I'll ever pull the trigger on that one. Number 23, Dirt Rally. That actually was just released, I think, in December. So it's a rally game, rallycross game from Codemasters using their Dirt series. 22, Dark Souls 2, Scholar of the First Sin. Never played any Dark Souls games, so can't weigh in on that. Number 21, Star Wars Battlefront. Heard it sucked really badly, but it was good, somewhat good well, I mean, it's all multiplayer, but it was a little bit good if you in certain modes, but for the most part it probably wasn't that great. So I'm kind of surprised to see it so high up on the list, but again, you know, I guess there's that hardcore fan base. It's like anything Star Wars I must play, and it was not really, from what I understand, not really that much fun. Number 20, Ori and the Blind Forest. Never played it, but it is a 2D platformer. Very, very beautiful art style on it. But it's if you're in it's almost Nintendo hard though. It's in some points, so you gotta know what you're getting into when you do that. Number 19, Pillars of Eternity. I own it. It's an old school RPG, very long RPG that I want to play at some point. It takes in, it takes you back to the days of Baldur's Gate and the Infinity Engine and all that stuff. But I have so many 100-hour RPGs right now that I want to dig into that everything is kind of in pause mode while I try to get through my back catalog. Number 18, Undertale. Pretty much talked about that. Number 17, Tales from the Borderlands. I'm so glad to see this high up there. I wish it was higher, but I can understand it where it's at. Love that. Love Tales from the Borderlands. Telltale Games hit it out of the park with that. They took a franchise, Borderlands, that didn't really have a very strong story, and they made characters and a story that was compelling and interesting, and more importantly, genuinely funny. Like, you genuinely cared about the characters in that game. And I really hope that they have a season 2. I don't know if they've ever announced that they're going to have a season 2 or not, but I really hope they do, because it was fantastic. Telltale Games at their best, honestly. You compare Tales from the Borderlands to Minecraft Story Mode, and it's like night and day. Minecraft Story Mode was something they just shat out on a weekend, whereas Tales from the Borderlands is just beautiful. Just beautiful. I love it. And I hope they continue with that. Number 16, Halo 5 Guardians. Haven't played it yet. May not play it. I don't know. Number 15, Dying Light. Follow-up to Dead Island. Dying Light represents an improvement on the technical front. So it's like a follow-up to Dead Island, which was a zombie survival third-person game. So I don't know. I think I vaguely remember Dying Light. I think it had like the parkour mechanics and stuff in it. So I vaguely remember some of it, but I don't remember all of it. Number 14, Until Dawn. This was the Until Dawn was the really good horror game that took sort of the tropes from old horror movies and old horror TV and kind of put them all together. You had a group of like college students who were on a mountaintop, and there was a killer on the loose and all kinds of weird supernatural stuff going down. It was good tongue-in-cheek, but also good horror. And if you're a fan of the old horror B movies and maybe C movies, It was a lot of fun to just see how many characters you could get either survive or get killed by doing the old things that you always yell at the characters not to do in those old B movies and stuff. So number 13, Grand Theft Auto 5 for the PC. Yeah, again, that was qualified for the PC. I don't know why. I assume it's on here again for the Xbox. I imagine it would be more popular on the Xbox or on the PS4 or whatever, because it's one of those things where it's that open world game that's with multiplayer trappings on it that you don't get too much for. You don't get too much with on your consoles. So number 12, Rise of the Tomb Raider, surprisingly high on the list, but I guess it's really resonated with a lot of people. I have the original Tomb Raider, or I'm sorry, the remake of Tomb Raider, the Tomb Raider remake thing, and Rise of the Tomb Raider is the sequel to that Tomb Raider remake. It's got all the same sort of mechanics and stuff and the same UI basically, but different story. And I can see it being interesting. I would definitely go back and pick up where I left off with Tomb Raider and continue moving with that. I don't know that I would record any of that, but it certainly looked interesting enough. The one complaint I've seen the most is, and this is from the people who enjoyed the original Tomb Raider games, is that there's not a whole lot of actual tomb raiding going on. It's a lot of other stuff. So number 11, Destiny: The Taken King. This has gotten a lot of good reviews. It's a lot of people really into Destiny. The Taken King was, from what I understand, the best expansion they've had with it. I intend on getting back into Destiny at some point. Now that I have a better setup, I think I should be able to do that at some point. Yeah, I need to get back on that train. I tried many moons ago to play Destiny after it was released and could not stay connected to any server for some reason. And hopefully I did a little test run earlier in last week, and it seemed to be working a lot better this time around. So perhaps in the future that will be something that I dig back into again from the beginning. Number 10, Super Mario Maker. There's no surprise there. It is the thing that is making everybody very happy, is playing everybody else's maps in Super Mario Maker. Number 9, Batman Arkham Knight. That's surprising since most people couldn't play it, but I guess this is for the console. Number 8, Xenoblade Chronicles X. Have no idea about the Xenoblade series. Number 7, Rocket League. So Rocket League's consistently up in the top 10 now. Number 6, Splatoon, a game that I will fail to understand for the rest of my life, but it is a Nintendo game, and kids be kids. Number 5, Life is Strange. I am surprised to see Life is Strange higher than Tales from the Borderlands, honestly, but it's something different. It's not a Telltale game. It's something from Don't Nod. The story was compelling in its own right, but not to me. I guess I'm more attuned to comedy than I am to serious talk. So I guess that's why I would rank them differently. But there you go. Number 4, Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. Sure, whatever. I have never played any of the Metal Gear games, so I can't comment on that. Number 3 is Fallout 4. Playing a bunch of that on live streams. I need to get back into live stream swing. It's been a while. I haven't been on a live stream for over almost 2 weeks now. So it's I need to get back in that. My character, I'm stuck in this one warehouse right now where I'm getting my ass shot up left, right, and center. But really enjoying that so far. Not really enjoying the building stuff in it. I was hoping that the building stuff would be a lot more interesting than it is. It's not really. It definitely looks like it was bolted on because, hey, Minecraft. But other than that, it does give it some longevity, and it is interesting in its own right. So I can't say that it's a total failure from the building perspective, but it is. It feels like they didn't really flesh that out as well as they could have. But other than that, the world of Fallout 4, I enjoy. I particularly enjoy the shooters stuff of it, being able to shoot stuff. I know a lot of people lament not having all the choices that they had in like Fallout 3 and especially in New Vegas. And I do lament that a little bit, but given how many RPGs are out there that are really good right now, I'm okay with having a more shooter focused RPG thing than RPG, at this point. Number 2, Bloodborne. A lot of From Software games. The From Software games are the ones that punish you the most, and I have not played any of them, so I can't comment on that. And number 1, surprise, surprise, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. I'm surprised to see this at the top because it was not at the top of anyone else's list, so I'm very actually happy to see this. I'm sure there's a lot of people still playing the game. I know I'm still playing it. I have not recorded anything this week. I intended on recording a bunch of it this week and did not get to it because Space Engineers. But I'm really enjoying it. I like that all the side quests are well fleshed out. I don't like Gwent. I really wish that Gwent wasn't a thing. Luckily, you can ignore it for the most part, although every time an NPC's like, I have some Gwent cards here, I'm like, go F yourself, dude. Just go F yourself. But other than that, I'm enjoying the rest of that game so far. So there you go. There you have it. The top 50 lists and the top lists of other things. I have other top lists, but I will hold on to them until next week because why not? There's not going to be much else in the way of news just yet anyway. But I think that will do it for this episode of Cube Ramblings. My goodness, have I talked for a long time, almost an hour and a half. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and I will see you next Sunday.